you do have a lot of TAs that are having trouble selling MSP services. Well, it's time to start figuring that out, because if you don't, MSP is going to infringe the other direction. We already, I'm saying we, but we as an MSP already have the trusted advisor role with our clients, assuming we've been doing a great job for them. They're going to listen to our recommendations.
Welcome to the Channel 2.0 podcast. I'm your host, Kameron Olsen. And here at the Channel 2.0 podcast, we talk all things channel, everything from 2 a.m. trust to Channel 2.0 and everything in between. We're going to go back to 2016 when ScanSource bought a small company called Intelisys. And everybody in the channel began to realize that maybe there was this thing where the MSP, VAR, and TSD integrator community could now come into the TSD, or back then master agent channel, and that there was almost a match made in heaven. Well, here we are almost a decade later, and I think we would all agree that it hasn't quite happened the way that we thought, but more importantly, it's starting to happen more and more today. And I couldn't think of a better guest that has kind of bridged the gaps between the two worlds and the MSP side, and he spends time on the TSD side. None other than my good friend, Jay Dixon with Criteria Consulting. Jay, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, sir.
So you've gone through the gamut. You've played on both sides of this fence. Why don't you give kind of the audience a little bit of a background? What were the major inflection points in your life that has gotten you to where you're at today?
Ooh, man, I don't know if the podcast is long enough for that one. How about I just sum it all up into maybe a paragraph or so?
Sounds great.
So I've been in the technology industry for 29 years. I started as a technician for a local dial-up ISP. I've, to your point, kind of run the gamut. I was, me and a couple of guys started what was just called an IT company, a couple of years later. And, we ran it like the children that we were. We'd go do a bunch of work, make a bunch of money, and then we'd spend all the money. But over the years, I've had different roles in, being a technician, in sales and executive leadership, and as an owner of an IT company, or what eventually was called an MSP. My first introduction to the TSD world was, in fact, exactly what you're talking about. It was in 2016 where a distributor of ours, ScanSource, reached out to us with this new thing they were doing. And I can tell you, it was very confusing at first. I did not understand what they were trying to do.
So it's interesting that you validate my point that I often tell people, that salespeople, when they decide to go start a business, start an agency or a trusted advisor on the TSD side. And technical people that do support and actually can get in and get their hands dirty leave their job and go start up an MSP. Sounds like that's pretty true for you then, huh?
That's pretty true. Yep. Okay. I would agree.
So tell us a little bit about that journey. Like, when did you start it? Why did you start it? What were some of the early pain points? What were the aha moments over that experience?
So I guess I'd in and out, but we'll go to the most recent experience is, I started my last MSP in 2018. So I'm going to tie this back to your point here. It was a couple of years after my introduction to the TSD world. Not to get too in the weeds here, but really the motivation for me was that the company I was working for at the time, we got purchased by a physical security company. And do remind me to bring that point up later, because I have another tie-in here that I think is relevant. But over time, it felt like the MSP portion of that business was kind of just getting thrown to the wayside. it is very much a customer service business. And that was the thing that I felt like we lacked. And so my inspiration for starting another one was very literally just to hone in and focus on the customer service kind of aspect. To get probably way ahead of myself, but the really interesting point is, and I think the timing worked out well for me to embrace both MSP and TSD, because while it was very confusing what Intelisys was trying to do for us, it made sense once I started a new MSP, because the history of MSP a little bit, right? Like, we love to just kind of go and figure out a new thing, package it up, and sell it as a new product, and not do a great job vetting out if we actually should or not, or, will we make money over time? We're generally just looking at gross margins and not net margins. And it's like, oh, look, we're making money. Let's do this. This makes sense. And so from that, especially early IT companies, but still today, a lot of MSPs will own products that, and this is an unpopular opinion, but I don't think they should own. There are plenty of MSPs playing in the space of like reselling circuits. There's MSPs that are white labeling or reselling VoIP services. And, I could just go on and on with the list, but VoIP's probably the most prevalent. Without getting on my soapbox of why I don't think they should, when I started the last MSP, I didn't have the capacity. It was the realization that it's like, okay, we could also sell some VoIP while we're at this, and we could make some great margin on it. But man, it's there's only 2 of us. I don't know that we can handle all these support calls. Let's look at doing this with a larger vendor. And so I did my first deal via TSD in 2018.
One of the things that I find I have the same conversation over and over and over again is somebody will call me up, or they'll reach out to me on LinkedIn, or somebody will make an introduction and they'll say, hey, we want to get into the channel. I'm like, great. Why do you want to get in the channel? And they're like, well, I have this one guy or gal who sells more of my product than any of my direct sales team. And when I ask him how to find more of him or her, they say, I got to get into the channel. And then they lean in and they're like, what's this channel thing? and so It quickly becomes a conversation of describing what the channel is. And I think most of the world out there doesn't realize that there are 2 different channels. You got the MSP channel and
I'd
the
argue there are
channel.
3.
You're going to say there's 3? Okay, this is great. We're going to throw a 3rd one on there. Walk us through, what is the difference in the channels that you see between the MSP channel and the TSD channel? But first off, what is the 3rd channel?
So I'm going to carve out and say that the VAR channel and the MSP channel are not the same.
Okay, I could see
and
that.
I'm going to say that because, again, this is my own experience. I used to, I've worked with different distributors, including ScanSource and Ingram, but, TD Synnex has a special place in my heart. So if any of those guys are watching, hi. They've done some really awesome things for me in the past, but it was a really common occurrence for me to go to their shows and realize that these were all VARs. Like, there were very few MSPs at these shows. And so we had a lot of conversations around like, what the hell are you guys doing helping MSPs? You need to figure this out because there's none of us here. But then I would go to TSD shows and it was the same experience. It was like, these are all like primarily like telecom agents and people that have grown into this world some other direction. And there were no MSPs there either. So it's like, where are the people MSPs I know at? Where are we at? Yeah. And so the MSP channel is wildly different because it's a lot more of call it a self-consumption channel than it is a brokering. Whereas the VAR channel is a lot of resell, right? You're gonna get hardware, software, licenses, things of that sort, put your margin on them and sell them. The TSD channel is a lot more of just brokering. You're creating the relationships, you're being the trusted advisor, and then you're getting a commission. The MSP channel is largely a software and services channel that the MSP consumes themselves. So they are buying the licenses either in bulk or in like an in arrears type model, and then packaging it as part of their solution. Not necessarily it's a line item being resold on their service. Sometimes it's I'm saying software, but it's services too, where you're consuming this service like a 24/7 SOC service, for instance, whereas an MSP will consume that as a service and then represent that they have a 24/7 SOC. And it really shows itself even in the conferences you go to, because when you go to MSP focused conferences, I don't see the same people I know from the TSD or the VAR channels. It is a complete, call it our conference friends. I have a completely different set of conference friends. I have 3 sets of conference friends.
That's amazing. Get to find friends all over in different industries, but we all talk
right.
the same language.
Oh, so the super fun clique is the few of us that do traverse the different ones. That's like the clique within the clique. You're like, oh, hey, you are familiar with these other worlds, and I see you at these other conferences.
I break down the MSPs and the trusted advisors in the TSD community really by the fact that the partners in the TSD community or trusted advisors, I use those phrases interchangeably, but they just are the sales motion, right? They're the procurement piece. They're finding leads and they're making a connection, and they're helping their clients procure the right technologies. The difference where the MSP comes in is they do a lot of that as well, but the MSPs will also install, they will also support, they will invoice, they put it on their paper. And so I find that, when back in the day when I sold prem-based phone systems, we only had 2 options, right? We had option A or option B. And when we went into a sales situation, if it wasn't option A or if it wasn't a good fit on option B, we tried to sell either option A or option B. Like, you only have a couple options. But I realized that the lift is so heavy to pick up technology, right? You got to train your salespeople. You got to put it in your accounting system. You got to train your support staff. You have to learn how to train and install it. Like, it's so heavy that most MSPs only pick up 1, maybe 2 options, where the partners in the TA side, there's 110 different UCaaS solutions in most of these TSD portfolios. They could go sell 110 because there is no heavy lifting. Once they know the technology, they just have to find the feature set. Was that confusing working both sides of that?
I mean, a little bit, sure. It's after doing a couple of deals in that world and really understanding the TSD world, the next thing that people experience is you get slaughtered by suppliers trying to tell you exactly what you're talking about. Look at all our features. Look at all of our shiny objects. It really comes down to, the features, like for an MSP, right? I'm going to continue to speak for that world. It is less about the features and more about the support. Because at the end of the day, an MSP, our product is customer service, right? Like, yes, we're selling help desk and we're selling proactive maintenance, and we're selling cybersecurity and efficiency and all these things. Absolutely, sure. But the customers just expect that. Like, that's not even a feature. Like, if you came in as an MSP in a sales pitch telling somebody you do those things, they're going to roll their eyes at you. They're like, yeah, all the other MSPs said the same thing. So, like, your product is customer service and proving that you are better at customer service than everybody else. So when you bring a TSD vendor to the dance here, they better be just as good at it. Because if they're not, your client is looking back at you going, why did you tell us to use these guys?
Yeah. You lose your credibility.
At best, you lose your credibility. At worst, you lose your contract.
Yeah. Back 10 years ago, the TSD channel basically had 3 products, right? They had connectivity of some sort, wireline, wireless, coax, fiber. This thing called UCAS, Unified Communication, sometimes we called it hosted voice or VoIP or whatever it was. And then kind of contact center. So those were like the three main categories we sold. I feel like on the MSP and the VAR side, obviously network management, help desk support was the core, but then you that side picked up cybersecurity and cloud solutions fairly quickly, right? Back in 2011, trade center goes down. People are like, oh, you need disaster recovery. You want to host in the cloud. You guys had cybersecurity and cloud. Well, it feels like within the last 5 years, maybe a little bit longer, the TSD community decided to go out and to pick up two new technology verticals in cloud and cybersecurity. And then I think we're seeing on the MSP side the same thing where they're picking up UCAS and CCAS and now connectivity. So the customer used to have kind of two trusted relationships, the TA, trusted advisor, and the MSP, and they both stayed in their lanes. But now I think we're seeing a convergence where those two people are now fighting over the customer and kicking each other out. Is that something you're seeing out there in the market as well?
100%. The only thing I would maybe challenge you on is this being a recent occurrence. Okay. Like I have known, living in the TSD world solely now, really, or primarily, I should say, I am getting a lot more perspective from other trusted advisors and agents that are out there. But if you had asked me this question when I was only in an MSP, I would have told you that MSPs were doing voice and connectivity and all those things you were saying for a very long time, since, like, honestly, my first experience with VoIP inside of an MSP was in 2005. It was when Hurricane Katrina hit and infrastructure was down, and the IT, we still weren't MSPs, right? The IT companies were tasked with figuring out a solution, and VoIP was the solution. So maybe it's more common now, like it's more prevalent that we're seeing the divide, because I have also seen a lot of really healthy relationships between TAs and MSPs. And I've seen some of the healthy relationships erode, for your point exactly.
Yeah. You look at statistics of the growth of technology being purchased through a distributor, third party, trusted advisor, MSP. And it was like 20-something% 10 years ago. And now, you see reports of things being up in the 70% range. Does that the thing that just creates, in your mind, is that the thing that creates more competition as more people are just purchasing through these channels?
It creates more opportunity, I would say. People are, doing it less on their own, but I can see it. That data is supported by the again, live in the MSP world. Like a lot of those decisions, clients weren't making it on their own. They were immediately coming to us and saying like, hey, what do you think? Even it was things outside of our scope, or things even outside of TA's scope, where we're looking to change our line of business software from this to this. But the reason they were coming to us is so they could ask us the follow-up question, what do you think? Or what questions should we ask them? So I would say that the reality confirms the numbers. Like, absolutely. People are less and less wanting to maybe rogue make decisions. Now, I'm saying that out loud and I'm thinking like, maybe I'd argue with myself on the transactional. Some of the transactional, there is definitely a lot of self-service happening, but anything beyond the transactional that has any sort of strategic component to it, yes, they are reaching out to advisors, MSPs, whoever they have in their network that they perceive as their generically trusted advisor.
Yeah, technology is evolving so fast. New technology is coming at an unprecedented rate with all the AI stuff, right? somebody whose job is to manage the IT spend or the technology within their space, they're going to make a decision on what UCaaS supplier they're going to use maybe every 36 months, but most likely probably 72 months, right? They're probably going to go through a recontract period. They're not going to want to look at it every 3 years. So these people in who are making these decisions are not in the trenches working with these technologies every day. And so it feels like, our channels are really primed to stay up to date. Who's the suppliers? What technology should I be looking at? What do you see, and why do people come to somebody like you to validate, or what is it that you provide that they typically don't have on their own?
Outside of unique abilities of myself, I would say just history and experience, right? That, I'm sometimes perceived as the guy that has done it before. So if he's already done it, then let me go ask him. And there's a lot of truth to that, because usually that actually is the case. But I personally, I do feel like in that instance, I like to uncover more than what the client is asking for. And I think that's the true role of the advisor, is don't function as a contractor, function as a consultant. If the customer is reaching out to you with a question, sure, answer their question, but dig a little deeper, ask them questions, ask them 4 times as many questions as they're asking you, right? That there's a lot of opportunity there.
How do you stay up to date with the latest trends? Like, what do you do kind of on a, I don't know, yearly, monthly, weekly basis? When there's 400 and something suppliers in this TSD, I'm estimating somewhere in the 500 range, maybe even a little bit more. And we're seeing more and more join the TSD economy every day. How do you stay up with all of that?
Yeah, that's a fun one. Because everybody on the supplier side is going to love to bombard you with calls and emails, and it's not that they're not effective, but it's just they're overwhelming. Personally, I have just settled on the few of each segment that I've had good experiences with, and through those good experiences, I've learned what their positives and their negatives are, because even then, maybe it is a feature set that this may be the most amazing supplier in the portfolio in this segment, but they are lacking this one thing. So my own personal experience has kind of retained that, and when we're bringing people, I just kind of bring the right people. Now, how that changes and evolves, when my fictitious supplier here fixes that one shortcoming, as of today, it's relationship. It's them letting me know that. Now, is that sustainable for the amount of suppliers that are out there? Absolutely not. And there's, TSDs have put together like their matrices and their charts, these suppliers, these features. It doesn't really cover the nuances is the challenge, because there's always everybody here that's done, 5 or 6 deals is all it takes, right? Is to start noticing that there's things outside that matrix and little nuances that you either have to make your own chart or just remember it. Long term, this I feel like is another place for AI, right? Take a database that is currently a matrix, load it with the nuances that TSD or TAs have discovered over time, and then let's chat with those things in natural language.
I love it. What do you look for when you're deciding, hey, I need to learn a new technology? Let's say you didn't understand UCaaS, and you decide, hey, I'm getting lots of requests for this UCaaS thing. When you go vet a supplier, what are the things that you're looking for to say, this is somebody who I want to put into one of my kind of, you mentioned you have your handful of ones that you prefer. What are the characteristics of the ones who make that preferred list?
So I really, because of the history, I really like to know about their support is really a big one, because I have learned, I won't call anybody out, but I've learned there are a couple of suppliers out there that in order to get the amazing support channel, there is a minimum spend with it, for instance. So really kind of poke those questions. Like, do you have minimum spend requirements for people to get different layers of support? What does support look like? How does a client call up? Are you deferring back to me when something comes up, or are you just handling it? And really, that's way more important to me. So if I'm maybe trying to discover a new vendor that, I don't have, like you said, out of my 5 or 6 that I really like, my starting point is really my TSD rep, right? I don't know if we're naming names here, but if we are, he knows who he is and he's awesome. So I'll start there and, he'll bring me to a handful of people and then I'll have those conversations. But that's really the beginning of the conversations. Like, I really want to know how they handle that. I don't care what the product is. Just what is, and selfishly, the reason I want to know that is I want to know how much blowback is going to come on to me. Like, am I going to introduce this person to a supplier who is going to come back and be a little frustrated that I guided them to that decision? I was like, I want them to come back to me and say, thank you, Jay. This is amazing. Because more people will be happy about that than they are about their little shiny object feature.
So support is, it sounds like in your mind, number one.
All the time.
Yeah. Do other factors like the salesperson's ability to actually present the product, some of those types of things come into consideration?
It does. And I hate that it does, because so one of the things that I've been doing now that I am, post MSP life and positioning MSPs is I am having a lot more conversations with my client than I was before, which is sad now that I've said that out loud. But I am trying to almost run interference on a bad salesperson, telling my client, I know that presentation wasn't great, but I have drilled them on all these different aspects, and I truly believe that they can deliver. You just got a bad pitch.
Yeah.
Like that's something I haven't done before that I actually have done very recently, as a matter of fact. So to directly answer your question, it is important. I just almost wish it wasn't, but it is, because, you're some of these companies we're talking to, there's an MSP in the channel. We just sold 600 employees and they're great and they're amazing. But what if they put a bad salesperson on a call with me? Does that person really represent the skill of the other 600 people? It's just, they just put a bad guy on the call. So we just have to navigate that.
Yeah. That's great. That's great insights. One thing that I find interesting, going back to the whole ScanSource Intelisys acquisition, is we all thought that MSPs were going to come in as resellers. But I think one of the biggest things that I didn't realize is the MSPs are looking at the TSD channel as a lead source and a new logo source. So a bunch of the national type suppliers, MSP suppliers, are now coming in as suppliers, and TAs can now go sell MSP services and kick out the little local guys. And then the local guys are coming in and they are actually becoming that trusted advisor-esque, kind of what you were saying, that, hey, I provide local MSP services, but hey, we're going to go sell you, some sort of UCaaS or CCaaS solution directly from the spot. What does the TSD channel need to know about MSPs in order to bring them in as resellers? So I work for a TSD. Let's say I work for a TSD. I'm the field rep, and I'm going around and trying to find all the TAs, and I'm stealing them from the other TSDs and promising them higher pass-throughs. And now we're fighting over the same handful of people. Instead of that, I want to go to the MSPs. What do the MSPs care about, and how do they make money in this space?
So that's a good one. I would say, so let's think about this. There are probably three, I'm going to say three, and maybe I'll revise this as I talk, kind of primary buckets that MSPs are going to exist in for stuff like this. They're going to exist in the bucket A of, I'm just going to do it myself and I'll make more money. Whether it's true or not, that's the perception, right? I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to make more money. There is also a bucket of, I'm going to try out TSD. It goes poorly. Some even lose their contract because of the bad experience.
And
they're
enough
burned.
Control. Yeah.
Yep. And they never want to do it again, right? You also have a bucket of MSPs that will embrace it. So coming in, you first need to know that those are kind of, and there's probably some more, I'm just thinking this on the spot. Those are probably your primary mindsets, though. You've had the guys that have been burned. You've had the guys that will embrace it, and you've got the guys that are going to blow you off because they're smarter than you. And no, this is stupid. I'm just going to do it this way and make more money. They exist, right?
Okay.
So understanding, I guess, you know what, for a supplier, it is helpful to understand not only the MSP model, but just, how they make their money, right? And it goes back to what I was saying earlier. They are a customer service organization. Yes, they make money all sorts of different ways, but for the sake of this conversation, we're going to hone in on that. They are a customer service organization. So if they want to sell products to the MSP clients, they have got to convince them that they are going to bring that same level of support and not put their contracts at risk. Because that's really where it's, let's just say like a decent sized, but not a huge MSP contract could be a $5,000 a month contract, right? If this is a mature MSP, we're going to speak on gross margins, not net margins, right? We're not going to pull in a whole bunch here, but we're going to say a gross margin on that. So it's going to be like a 70% margin here. They're not going to put a $5,000 a month contract at risk with a 70% margin to sell a $1,000 a month UCaaS solution with a 10 to 20%. They're just not going to do it. So if you can earn the trust that that client is going to be taken care of and that there is not additional labor that will fall onto the MSP, then you will win them over.
Do you find that the MSPs align more like they do with their other vendors in this space? Like they don't have, hey, I'm going to go willy-nilly, like pull from the matrix to see what vendor has the best feature sets, and then, hey, we're going to go with that. It's like, I have to trust these people more because I have so much more at risk.
Yes. The other channels, you said the word earlier, control. So the other channels, they have more control. So while they might be using a, cybersecurity software product that could fail them, but they still have the tool is theirs, the insight into it is theirs, the deploying it correctly is theirs, the labor on response is theirs. They still control everything about it. And in many instances, the end client doesn't even know who the software package is. They just know that they are protected by their MSP. So it is a control layer.
How do MSPs, you sell a business, you have some auditor come in, you do your financials, you do your books, you look at your EBITDA, you do a multiple of your EBITDA based on your contract strength, all that type of stuff, and that's the value of your company. The one thing I hear all the time is, I want to paper the contract. I want it on my paper. I want it on my paper. And what I think they're saying is, I want the top line revenue so that it shows EBITDA, and then my books are worth something, when I go to sell it as a multiple. Are MSPs starting to make that transition of seeing mailbox money from the TSD community as a revenue stream that offsets that and they now have value, or are they still caught up in the whole papering the contract?
I don't think the papering is a big issue. I have experienced that, but revenue is vanity, right? You can't buy your groceries with revenue. So if I'm a $10 million company with a 3% margin, I just think that's silly. I've seen that less, right? Like I've seen the maturity of MSPs grow, that there is not as much of this whole put it on my paper, unless it's back to our other point of it's a control thing. They just want it to appear that it's theirs. But from a revenue and value perspective, I don't see that. And while I can't speak for all of the buyers or private equity firms or everything that are out there, but like when it comes to evaluation, they know the difference. They're not going to give the same value to a resold internet circuit as they are to an actual support contract.
Do they have the same problem in the TSD space? Do MSPs have the same problem as the TAs in the TSD space, where I can't go to a bank and get an SBA loan or a loan or whatever based on revenue from a TSD? They have to use the contracted revenue from clients and stuff in order to get loans. And
no, you can absolutely get SBA loans are not a challenge for MSPs. I mean, we're going to assume that we're talking about a decently mature, we're not talking about big boys, but a $3 to $5 million MSP. Yeah, that's not hard because they're usually well structured as far as people go. You've got your support contracts, you have revenue, you have, everything a bank wants to see. It's a traditional company, which is, the agent side of the world. I've seen that all over the place too, right? Like you have how many solopreneurs that their only income stream is the commission, but I've seen, full agencies that operate like that as well, that are, a more traditional company. But I would say largely more MSPs are going to be traditional.
I've seen private equity roll-ups sweep through the TSD community. Yes. I've also come to notice that the same thing is happening in the MSP. I feel like the same thing's happening in the MSP. Are you seeing that out there?
Absolutely. There isn't an MSP owner out there that hasn't gotten an email, phone call, letter, whatever it is, trying to value their company or trying to buy their company. Yeah, it's everywhere.
Why do you think that's happening these days?
That's a good question, actually, because I'm seeing it, living on the advisor side, I'm seeing it with other industries as well. They're just professional services industries that I'm working with and some others. Like it's everywhere. What's even more interesting though, is it feels like there's a decrease in VC and more PE. So I don't know if this is just kind of the trend in the world in general, but yeah, it's definitely happening.
I love the fact that MSPs are coming into this space, right? Because some of the technology is difficult, right? It's not the TSD community does really well with as a service or managed services. If we sell managed voice, which is basically what UCAS is, if we sell managed cloud, which, basically private cloud and all that type of stuff is managed by somebody, the things that we haven't sold is the network, right? The PCs, the help desk support, things like that. Those just naturally kind of come in. And so it makes sense that that's where we go next. As I talk to new suppliers all the time who want to get into the TSD community, I begin to realize our industry is just barely scratching the surface on actual technology that are in the stacks of most of these companies. What do you want to see come into the industry? What do you wish was like a line item, vertical technology line item on the TSD's portfolios?
This is so far off of everything you brought up, but what I would personally like to see, I would like to see a lot more software. So living on this side of the fence, I have access to MSP services, managed voice, everything you listed, right? I don't have access to ERPs, and maybe some. So, this is maybe not a sweeping statement, but line of business software, ERPs. Those, I spend a lot of time in those conversations and have no access to sell or be commissioned on those. I would love to see that start to enter the space. Some of those guys out there, some, have like affiliate programs, but truly enter the channel. That personal selfishness, I would love to see that become another tool in our toolbox.
A provider that actually knows what a trusted advisor is, what the TSD community is, and then plays the same rules as all the rest of the suppliers in this space.
Yes, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing. I'm seeing companies with like HR solutions, right, wanting to get into the space. I'm seeing BPOs who want to get in, like dental software providers, dental software or dental insurance companies, and all of those things, because they're like, hey, your people, your trusted advisors are having conversations with the people that we sell to, but they're not having these conversations. So how do I get into that inflection point?
Absolutely right.
Yeah. Jay, what didn't we cover today? If you had words of advice for the suppliers out there in the community who are trying to grab the attention of MSPs and saying, hey, come sell this technology through the TSD community.
Create a relationship with the MSP first. Do not sell your product. Create a relationship. Discuss those soft things we talked about. That is far more important than the feature. The features may be important ultimately, because especially if we're trying to tailor solutions to our clients, they're going to make their businesses more efficient, more profitable. Yes, features are important. But first, it's got to start with trust. It's got to start with, giving everybody the warm and fuzzies. They're going to be able to do a good job. And I would advise that everybody figure out MSP, because you're going to see more and more and more. So, if you go back to where I told you that I go to these different conferences and I don't see MSPs in any of them except the MSP conference, that's changing. And that is changing pretty quickly. I am starting to see the same people. I am starting to see actual MSPs at the VAR and the TSD conferences. I also saw, I told you that our company was bought by a security company 2 iterations of my life ago. The reason for that was because the security company realized how their industry was changing, and they realized how, analog was going out the door. IP is the new thing, and we don't understand IP, so we're going to go buy this IT company, right? That's happening here too, right? So from what I understand, you do have a lot of TAs that are having trouble selling MSP services. Well, it's time to start figuring that out, because if you don't, MSP is going to infringe the other direction. We already, I'm saying we, but we as an MSP already have the trusted advisor role with our clients, assuming we've been doing a great job for them. They're going to listen to our recommendations. So learn.
Well said. Jay, thank you for your time.
Always.
Although we're seeing more and more hybrid type people who kind of stand on both sides of this line, there's not a lot. So your wisdom and you sharing your perspective is very much appreciated. Thank you very much for joining the show.
I appreciate being here.